When Peter first noticed strange holes in his thumb, he freaked out completely. He had no idea what could have possibly caused this, or how potentially dangerous this was, but he soon learned. He went to the doctor that very afternoon, but when that man took a look at it, the message for Peter was not good. The doctor called the police immediately after determining what was going on. Peter was just left without any explanation. The doctor had done some tests on him, and after seeing the results, he immediately informed the police and ran out of the room, leaving him behind. And when he found out that the doctor had locked the on him, Peter started to see red. He started banging against the door with his full weight, trying to break it open. 40-year-old Peter was a single man. He had dated in the past, but it had just never gone well. He hoped that this time it would be different. He'd spent a lot of time preparing for the date. He really wanted it to go well. And it would be the first time they'd meet in person, but not everything would go as planned. He met the woman online and knew it was a long shot, but he met up with her. The date was nothing extraordinary. She really didn't seem that interested, and he wasn't sure yet if he wanted to see her again. But the next morning, he was sure he didn't. After all, what was beyond strange, he didn't want to pull her into it when he didn't even know what was going on. The morning after his date, Peter discovered that there was something strange about his thumb. Peter's thumb was covered in tiny holes. He thought that maybe something had stuck into his thumb, but bringing it closer to him, he saw that the holes were digging into his skin. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell for more amazing stories. He pressed on it with his other fingers, and it hurt a bit more. Something was very clearly wrong. Peter decided that he was going to try and dig it out, whatever it was in the thumb, with tweezers. He went to the bathroom and pulled out his tweezers. But before he could dig into his thumb, he hesitated. He didn't really have any idea what he was dealing with. Peter didn't like doctors. He preferred to take care of things by himself. The doctor's office set up a semi-emergency appointment for that same afternoon. They told him that there would be others ahead of him, but they would definitely see him by the end of the day, at the least. In the meantime, the doctor told Peter that he needed to do something for him. The doctor told Peter that he needed to think about anything that was different recently, that could have caused this anything out of the ordinary. It would greatly help the doctor figure out what exactly was wrong. Peter thought back over the last week. He hadn't really done anything too out of the ordinary. He went on a hike through the forest a couple of days ago. He easily could have touched something out there before, as Peter continued thinking. The hike didn't make that much sense. Surely, other people had gone hiking on the same trail. It was a popular route. He wouldn't be the first person to be experiencing this. It was difficult to think of anything that was out of the ordinary. Peter was an average guy. He didn't do much except hike occasionally and go to the local coffee shop. He worked from home and didn't go outside that much. Peter had gone on the date night before. He'd been talking with the woman online for a while and had eventually decided to go on a date. Peter had been excited to try out dating again. He still hadn't found his soulmate and was hoping that this date would go well. Things would end up taking an unexpected turn from that moment. The date began. Peter felt like something was off about the woman. She didn't really seem interested in him. Looking through his messages with her, he could see more and more that she didn't really like him. He'd just been a bit desperate and wasn't thinking clearly. Could she have something to do with all of this? Luckily, the holes on his thumb didn't seem to be changing too much. They'd grown a bit bigger and were more obvious to the eyes now. He got to the doctor's office and sat in his car for a second, trying to come up with any more answers. Peter really couldn't think of anything else with a deep breath to calm his nerves. Peter walked into the doctor's office and signed in. While in the waiting room at the doctor's office, Peter was getting a ridiculous amount of attention. At this point, the holes in his thumb were very plain to see, and everyone around him was shocked by what they were seeing. The other people in the office didn't try to hide their curiosity. The few kids there wanted to go have a look, but their parents held them back. Still, It was as if everyone forgot why they were there with their own medical complaints. It was then that the doctor came out to call in the next patient. Everyone there collectively agreed that Peter should be seen first. None of their problems were serious, but Peter's clearly was. Peter was a bit put off by this, but thanked them nonetheless. Once inside his office, the doctor was able to take a proper look at Peter's thumb, and he was shocked. He had never seen anything like this. He would remember, if he had, something like this wasn't something you just forgot. And even more, the doctor hadn't even heard of anything like this in his medical books. The doctor knew that this was going to take some time. He made a few calls to have his waiting patient sent to another doctor on call. The doctor ordered tests for Peter, and while they waited for the result, he studied Peter's thumb intensely. The strange thing was that while earlier Peter had felt some pain, he didn't feel it anymore. His whole thumb was completely numb. It didn't even hurt when the doctor pushed on it. Peter decided that he needed some air and went to use the bathroom while he was gone. The doctor received a private message from the forum. He opened it eagerly, hoping that it was the answer he'd been seeking. And to his luck, it was. But it was also terrible news, and everything would have to change fast. Another doctor had indeed seen this condition before, and if they didn't do something soon, it could turn into a very big problem for everyone, including Peter. The doctor read the message again and again, and knew that if this other doctor was right there, he needed to take quick action. Peter returned from the bathroom. His tongue was not looking good. The holes were starting to spread to the rest of the hand. He was getting really scared about it now, but he had to show it to the doctor. There was just one problem. The doctor wasn't in his office when Peter got back. Peter was just deciding what to do now when he heard something happen behind him. The he'd just come through had been locked from the outside. He'd been trapped in here. Peter begged for an explanation through the door, but no one was talking to him. All the nurses and doctors were frantically talking to each other, and nobody was answering his questions. All he was told was that he needed to stay calm until the police arrived, but this was not good enough for Peter. Nervous and scared, the staff's reaction to his thumb was really starting to worry him. Soon enough, those fears turned into anger. Why was nobody talking to him? With no other idea, Peter began to kick at the door. He was desperate to get out. After a few kicks, the door lock broke and the door swung wide open. The people on the other side started screaming, and Peter's doctors stood back. Peter stood there pinning hard. It hadn't been easy to kick the door open, but he needed answers, and someone had to tell him what was going on right now. Peter's doctors ordered everyone else to get away and told Peter stay back. He shouldn't get close to anyone right now. The furor on his doctor's face told Peter everything he needed to know about his fate. But Peter was determined. He told them that he wouldn't stay back unless they gave him answers. Before his doctor could speak, 3 armed officers came into the building and spotted Peter. The doctor pointed at Peter and started screaming, "It's him!" All 3 officers took out their pistols and aimed at him carefully, at Peter, who was feeling faint now. What the heck was going on? Peter quickly threw his hands up into the air as the police turned their attention to him. He almost had tears in his eyes and begged them all just to tell them what was going on. One of the officers calmly explained to Peter that they would tell him everything, but he needed to be isolated immediately. His doctor firstly apologized for not telling Peter what was going on. He'd been scared. It was in every day that the person with an awful flesh-eating virus came in and had to follow procedures that he'd never had to do before. He felt awful, but there was more. He discussed with Peter what he'd been doing that day before. Peter had taken a hike and that he had gone on a date night. Luckily for Peter, the bad date hadn't been the cause of all this. Instead, it was more likely that he'd touched some infected plant while out on his hike. But which one? Luckily for Peter, the hospital had the medication that they needed, but he'd had to be in isolation for a while. The police had gotten involved because they needed to talk to Peter about his hike. But when they'd seen him out of the isolation room, they had panicked because his doctor had panicked. It was a big mess. There was more. They also had to make sure that no one else would get infected. Peter was transported safely to a better hospital, where he would be in isolation and get the treatment for the flesh-eating virus on his hands. Fortunately, the medication caused the virus from spreading, and within a few days, it started reversing the problem. The officers had kept everyone off the trail and, after some heavy searching, had found a plant that was native to the area. It was tested and found to be the cause of Peter's problem. It was uprooted and disposed of. There haven't been any cases since, and within a month, Peter is completely better and ready to go on dates again. Binding bonds through beautiful tales. Thank you for watching.